Hi guys, it's Colin. This week we are making the new Parker on the Porch mug rugs. So they're going to release Friday, December 5th, and they come in a 4-pack. So if you've made Parker on the Porch mug rugs before, they're all made pretty similarly. So I'm going to make a particular one today, but the directions will apply to any mug rug that looks like this with the straight vertical line here. Some of them have the diagonal one, so fabric placement's a little bit different, but this video tutorial will work for any that look like this. So this is a cute new set. Feeling a little frosty. I think that's me today. There's Snow Place Like Home, Freezing Season, and then we're going to do the last one today. So what I have done is I have hooped poly mesh in my hoop here. So I use a multi-needle machine. This is a Mighty Hoop. It might be different from your machine, but the directions will be the same. So I have stitched our placement stitch here. I stitched it in a dark gray, so you'd be able to see it. Again, this is poly mesh. You can use 1 layer or 2 layers. One is fine, so that's what I do. So here's our placement line. So for today, you'll need your batting. I like to use cotton batting. You'll need, and then our fabrics. So we have 2 fabrics for the front that I have pre-cut right here and pre-pressed. And then we have our back fabrics that are ready to go. So I'm going to set those aside for right now. And we're going to talk about the first step. So the first step is to stitch your placement line, which again, I have already done. The second step is to put down your batting. So you want to make sure it covers your placement line, which it does. And I'm going to use 2 layers of batting in this one. So this mug rug has a lot of background quilting, so it's not quite as puffy as some of the other ones that have a lower density stitching on the background. So you can see here, I did a little science for us. I'm not sure if you can tell, but this one was made with 1 layer of batting. So I think you can see that it is a little bit thinner than these 2, where I used 2 layers of batting in both of these. So I started with 1 and I thought, you know what? I think I'd like it a little bit better if I use 2. Now, my machine can handle 2 layers of batting. And I would guess that most contemporary embroidery machines can too, but you know your machine best. If you feel like it can't handle 2 layers of batting, then just use 1. Totally fine. It'll turn out great. This one, it looks great. It's just not quite as soft and squishy as when you have the 2 layers. So in this tutorial, we'll be demonstrating 2 layers of batting. But again, you can use 1. Totally fine. So I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to stitch step 2, which is going to tack down our batting, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the rest. All right, so step 2, tack down our batting. And now the optional choice here is to cut out your excess batting from inside the seam allowance. So the second step stitches the batting down just inside of the outside fabric placement lines. So this is optional. Again, I usually do it, not always. And I feel like it makes a difference on hot pads and the mini quilts. I haven't noticed as much of a difference on the coasters. I don't know why that is. It might just be totally in my head. But I like that Jen offers us this step if you want to. And again, totally skip it if you don't. You can see that I'm kind of rough cutting this here. So I'm demonstrating how we would do it. I'm using a small hoop for this design, so there's not a lot of space to get my hands in there to really cut this really well. So I could use a larger hoop if I wanted to cut a little bit more precisely here. I'm just kind of doing a rough cut of the batting out of the seam allowance. You probably should do it a little bit nicer. But here we go. All right, so that's pretty much done. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to place our first outer fabrics. So the first one is going to stitch is this side here. So this, I use this white kind of glittery, subtle glittery one here. So we're going to do that one first. So what I like to do, now again, I've pre-pressed my fabrics already. Make sure you do that first, is I like to line it up here and I give this a 1/4 inch seam allowance right here. And if you cut this fabric on a straight edge, that's one step you don't have to alter later. You can just, it'll stitch right here and then we'll already have our straight seam allowance. We won't have to trim. So I'm going to go and we're going to tack down this one and then we'll do the other side. Now that we've tacked down half of our front main fabric here, right here, we're going to do the little side piece. So you could use a print for both sides. It might get a little bit distracting, you know, if you have a lot of embroidery here. So I think it's better to use a solid, but you can use a print, whatever you like. This is actually really cute too, the snowflake quilting on here. I could see this with 2 prints and just quilting and then no design. I think that would be nice too. I might try that next. So for this one, our fabric, ultimately we want to be like this, right? So I want my penguins and my skiers going up, but this is a flip and stitch. So we're going to line it up here. And then I like to line it up right with that 1/4 inch seam allowance that we already had. So it's going to stitch here. Now I'm going to double check because I really want to see that penguin in there because the design I'm stitching today has a penguin. So I want to make sure that my penguin is going to fit. Okay, so this is not a science. Think of it as an art. You just kind of wing it and do the best you can. But my penguin was definitely going to appear there. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this down and then we'll flip it and keep going. We've tacked down our second fabric here. In my case, it's a print. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over right side up, and then we're going to stitch it down here, right here. So I'm going to go ahead and use some tape. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I use masking tape because it's cheaper, and I'm cheap on supplies, so I can spend my money on fabric. So the thing with masking tape, though, is you don't want to sew through it. So make sure you tape outside of your seam allowance, otherwise your needles will get all yucky. So let's see here. Let me put one more piece down. And then I always watch this when it's in the hoop, but the tape allows you to kind of keep your fingers out of the way a little bit better. So there we go. We've kind of taped it to the side. What we're going to do now is I'm going to stitch this down and then I'm going to run the quilting stitch on the main thing, and then we'll come back and talk about the design. Now that we've run the quilting, we're ready to put on the main design. So I'm going to hold it up here. Oh, you can see it. You can see the little sparkle in that fabric. And I love these snowflakes. I swear, every time Jen comes out with a new design of quilting, I was like, oh, it's my favorite. They're all my favorite. But so the next steps that we're going to do are we're going to run the design. So this one has a little penguin and it says just chillin'. So it's the 4th one in this set here. It's going to be in the same kind of vein as these right here. Cute, whimsical designs. Love it. Perfect for kids, hostess gifts, whatever. I am going to do all the design here. If I stop in between each one and film, this video will be 7 years long. So you can choose your colors on your machine. I'm going to keep mine in this same theme right here because I'm boring with colors. I just try and pick whatever I have that matches in the fabric. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the back. Okay, so we did the embroidery. So you can see my adorable little penguin just chilling. So now the last step is to put on the back. This is an envelope back, so you need 2 pieces, and I've already cut and ironed these. They're still a little bit wrinkly, but it's okay. So you're going to put them right sides down, right? Because we're going to flip this thing right side up. So you want to make sure your pieces are cut large enough to cover all your seams, of course. This is very large of a piece, so it'll be perfectly fine. In fact, it might be too big, and I'll have to keep it out of the corners here. But there we go. And try and get it straight if you can. There we go. So this is our finished edge, right? So it goes right sides down. This one has to go down first. You can either finish both edges like I usually do, or you can just leave this second one unfinished and just make sure you put the finished one down first, and then make sure they totally overlap. So here we go. So this is going to be my coaster sandwich here, as you will. And so I'm going to stitch this last one down, and then we'll turn it right side out. Stitching is done. And so now I'm going to pull the little bit of tape I used off, and then we're going to cut it out. So this has rounded corners, so I like to use my pinking shears, and it doesn't have a turn hole that we need to sew up, so you don't have to worry about that. So these are super easy to cut out. I leave about a 1/4 inch, maybe a scant 1/4 inch around here. I do think the pinking shears help a lot with the rounded corners. I don't have any proof of that. I feel like they do. So if you don't have a pair, they're pretty cheap on Amazon. Jen has them in her supply posts. I just use the Fiskars brand. I'm sure Kai makes like a $50 pair or something. You know, these are like 10 bucks. So there we go. We did that. And now we're going to use our turning tool here to kind of poke out those corners to get that nice, beautiful shape. So here we go. This one's a little stiffer and a little harder to turn because it does have that denser quilting that we talked about at the beginning. So I use my beautiful little tool here to just poke out those rounded corners. Just takes a second. All right, and there we go. Straighten it up. Oh, perfect. Okay, so let's press it real quick. Always gotta press it. All right, So here we go. I love that little sparkle. It just gives it a little extra. And the cutest little penguin ever. Jen always has the cutest little critters. Oops, don't mind that. All right, there we go. So to close the hole in the back, you can use double-sided sticky tape. You can use fabric glue. You can hand sew it. You could use that hem tape, the no-sew hem tape that's you have to iron on. Whatever you want. Honestly, I don't typically even close them. I just leave them like this because it doesn't really matter. So here we go. Here is our cute little winter set. Releasing Friday, December 5th from Parker on the Porch. Great little mug rugs. Thanks so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see what you make.